This woman gave birth to 9 babies until doctors discovered something terrifying. The birth of a child is a real miracle. When a woman gave birth to not one but several children, she was beyond happy. But then doctors discovered that one of them was not quite like the others, and the reason for this would make her heart burst. Halima Sisse and her husband Abdul Karel Abi lived in Mali. They had always talked about having children, and the timing seemed right, but to be honest, starting a family was quite a daunting experience. Especially for Palima, even though she was already 26 years old. She grew up the only child in the family, she had no brothers or sisters, and she never knew how difficult it is to raise a large family. Her husband grew up with 2 siblings, an older one and a younger one. So he knew the difficulties, but frankly, he didn't know how difficult it was to raise a child. Although they often talked about having a child and starting a family, they kept putting it off until later. Ideally, Halima wanted to have 2 or, at the very least, 3 children, which seemed an acceptable number. Halima became pregnant, and they were certainly happy. But they would be lying if they said they weren't a little scared. They had no idea that the situation would quickly escalate, because during their first visit to the hospital and their first examination, they were in for a big surprise. Halima prepared for the examination and was anxious to find out if her baby was okay. The doctor sat down next to her and began to examine her belly while he made small talk and asked her the usual questions about whether she was worried and whether they had thought of a name yet. Suddenly he fell silent, looking at the screen. Something in the expression on the doctor's face alarmed Halima. The doctor left the office and went to get his colleague to confirm what he saw there. He came in, looked at the screen, furrowed his brow. They talked to each other for a while. Then the first doctor turned and smiled softly before announcing that she would have not 1 child but 7. She was shocked to see 7 babies on the monitor. She couldn't have imagined in a terrible dream that she would give birth to 7 at once. But the shock must have been written on her face as the doctors quickly assured her that everything was fine, and she just needed to take very good care of herself so that all the babies would grow inside her and develop well. Look at the chances of multiple pregnancies. About 1 in 250 pregnancies results in twins, and 1 in 10,000 in triplets. The chance of having 6 children is 1 in 4 billion. And the chances of 7 children being born were so small that it is hard to imagine how it could have happened. When Halima broke the news to her husband, he was shocked. His legs began to buckle and he had to sit down for a moment. It would certainly be a milestone in their lives, but things would not go too smoothly, as even with a normal pregnancy, the strain on Halima's body would be terrible. And so many children in such a small space could be dangerous to her health. So the doctors recommended she go to a special hospital in Casablanca. This was a good recommendation to protect not only herself, but also the children. As the pregnancy continued, her belly grew indefinitely. Pregnancy was so debilitating that she found it difficult to do even the simplest things and could barely walk. But she was struggling to hold on to her dream of having the perfect family with children. So she knew she could do it. After all, things couldn't get any worse. Now there was another twist. Stay tuned to find out what happened next. The day came when Halima finally went into labor. She was taken to a special hospital where there was a small army of people ready to help her. There were people ready to carry her things. Anesthetists, doctors, nurses, gynecologists, students, midwives, everything and everyone. Luckily, Halima felt particularly confident and she knew she was in good hands. When she went into labor, the doctors decided that natural childbirth would cause too much damage to Palima's body, so the babies were delivered by cesarean section. When the doctor made the incision and opened her womb, he was shocked by the number of babies. Of course, he knew there would be 7, but the sight of 7 tiny wriggling babies was really impressive. However, he didn't have time to be surprised. He started pulling the babies out one by one, counting them as he went. He counted 4 babies, 6 babies, 7 babies, and then the doctor saw that there were more. The two tiny babies were hidden behind the others, and the ultrasound machine had difficulty detecting them. As the doctor examined each of the babies, something caught his attention on one of them. It was much smaller and looked much weaker than the others. It was clear that this baby needed special attention if it was to have any chance. It was obviously a very small infant, and there was something wrong with it. Whether it would survive remained unknown. The baby was taken to the operating theater and was found to be bleeding profusely internally. The doctors tried to find the cause and stop the bleeding, but such a small baby also has a fragile body, and even the slightest shock could have been enough for it to give up and die. The doctors worked for hours, and finally, after what seemed like an eternity, they managed to save the child. In the recovery room, Halima was torn between joy for her 8 healthy children and worry for the 9th. There was no denying that they were more than shocked. They had just come to terms with the fact that they had 7 children, and suddenly there were 2 extra. It was going to be a hard and rocky road, but if they work together, they can cope with all the difficulties. Fortunately for the family, things have only gotten better. All the children have developed beautifully, and even the smallest of them has grown and become indistinguishable from the others, as if nothing had happened. Halima and Abdul Karel were looking forward to the big family life they had dreamed of. Now it's your turn. What do you think of this incredible story? How would you react if you found out you were expecting not 1 but 9 children? As always, we look forward to hearing what you think in the comments. Until next time,